Welcome to the MBA Mission podcast, where every week we discuss different MBA application components and give our expert guidance on everything business school admissions related.
Hi everyone, this is Harold Simansky here, Senior Admissions Consultant here at MBA Mission, and I'm here today to talk about the MBA admission process as part of our very first podcast on this subject.
It's nice to make history with you, Harold.
And Jeremy, me as well.
Yeah.
So why don't we just jump right on in here? I'm today meeting with Jeremy Shinewald, founder of the company.
Right.
Jeremy, I come to you one day and I say, hey, I'm interested in applying to business school. How do I think about this process? What do I do?
Okay, so I've been doing this for 20 years and full-time for 20 years. And I think that it's such a broad question, but I think that if you're talking about, hey, what do I do to get started in this process? I would even say, I would hope that you would ask that question well before you're getting started. Okay. So I think to me, I think the best applicants are the ones who are creating their own long-term plans and have taken. So let's use right now we're in May. The essays have just come out in May, right?
Jeremy, or to take a step back here.
Yeah.
Let's say I'm graduating college, about to start that 2-year analyst position. When do I even start thinking about applying to business school?
Right. Okay, that's great. So I'm gonna use that benchmark of May as the latest point, at which you're getting all of your ducks in a row. But you can do this as soon as you start that analyst program, or even when you're in college theoretically, if you really know that you want to go to business school. And so the things you need to do before you apply. At this point, at most schools, you still have to get a test out of the way, the GMAT or the GRE, right? So you want to be considering that at the earliest stage possible to work through whatever test issues you might take. I would say for most people, it's a 3, 4, 5 month process. Okay. So when you see that grade 3, 4, 5, sometimes that's in your senior year of college when you're like, oh, things are winding down. I have quiet last semester. Sometimes it's not right when you're starting your analyst program, right? It's when you're maybe you're too busy in your analyst program, and towards the end of that program, you might have like a tiny window between jobs or something like that. So the bottom line is it requires a lot of planning so that you get it done at the latest by the May before your application season starts, because you don't want to be, like I was about to say, MBA essays get released in like May before for a September deadline. Yeah. That's not when you want to be starting GMAT or GRE. Other things, you can get your...
Jeremy, just very, very quickly. So just to recap here, when the essays roll out in May, what should we have already had done?
Right, okay. Yeah. Got that test out of the way. You definitely want to have done your school research by then, right? Okay. So we want to have hopefully, if we can, visited the school, attended some online events, talked to students and alumni, really got a sense of what the school is about, read our insider's guides, potentially reviewed our on-track modules. You want to be conversant in the language of the school. You don't want to be saying, what is a map project at Ross? If you're planning on applying to Ross, what is the first year project at Tuck, or what is the case method of Harvard, or whatever it might be.
Right, of course. Because the reality is, and we see this all the time, which is people consider business school, where it's really they're agnostic when it comes to applying to schools, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of difference in each one of them. And what you're saying right now is you have to find out what those differences are, and you have to go visit, you have to figure that out even before you think about applying.
And you have to do it for yourself to become a smart consumer. And I think that's something that a lot of applicants completely lost. A lot of applicants, they look at rankings, they say, I want to go to the top school, and they don't think about themselves like having an experience for 2 years of their life and a network and a community they're going to deal with for the rest of their lives. And then it's also really important to the admissions committee, if they're asking questions like, why our school, you have to be intelligent. If you're not intelligent about what they offer you and how it fits in with your goals, then they're probably going to find someone else who can speak intelligently. So we got your testing, your research about the schools. Then I think there are all the aspects of your profile that pertain simply to to personal improvement. You want to be crushing in your job to the extent you can be, right? Of course. That's the easier said than done, but you want to be doing that. But the things that are more within your control, building a really robust community profile, right? Like not just phoning it in, not just going to that, whatever it might be, the local soccer field and coaching soccer because it's easily available, but like actually finding something that is meaningful to you where you can lead. Maybe 2 activities or 3. Yeah. Same thing with your personal life, right? Try to find areas, maybe you've always wanted you're an artist, Harold. Right. You've always wanted to have an art exhibit. Right. And go and get that done before you apply. I'm not saying become an artist to get to business school. Right, I know what you mean. But just, so I think the again, just to review, I think the big pieces are they are getting your testing done, getting your school research done, and then really moving ahead on your professional, personal, community development. There are a few other things in there, but that's the big picture there. Okay. I think this is your podcast here, and I'm talking.
Sure. No, of course. Listen, one thing I certainly want to talk about is this notion. You mentioned it in terms of community, developing community relationships, really getting very involved in your community, things that are important to you. Now, Jeremy, you just mentioned that before that May 1st deadline, you want to be involved in your community. The reality is people are going to say, listen, I'm working 80 hours a week. What does it mean to be involved in your community when I simply can't do a lot of things outside the office?
Right. I think you're raising an important point, which is that applicants tend to think about community service as just something that it must be done. The admissions committee wants to see values transmuted through, some civic and there's nothing wrong with that. There's a lot right with that. Yeah. But I think that you don't want to lose the forest for the trees, which is that the schools want to see leadership, and that they're not counting like 10 points for volunteering at a no-kill shelter and 3 points for working in a diversity group at your office. It's that they want to know that you have a propensity to lead. And when they're looking at a bunch of different applicants who, maybe you and I are similar. We have the same GPA, the same GMAT score. We're both at the same desk at Deloitte. But you've gone out and you led that enormous training module for our team. And you, in your spare time, got involved in a diversity group, and I went home and I napped. Right. And there's a difference between those two things. And so it doesn't matter that you did 2 things at the office relative to someone else who, again, might have worked at a homeless shelter, whatever it might be. What matters is that you're showing that propensity to lead, and that can happen at your office. That's totally fine. That can happen in your office. It can happen in your community, and even if it doesn't happen, you might be able to show that leadership in your personal life. Maybe you were particularly active with supporting, unfortunately, a sick relative, or tutoring a cousin to make sure he gets through school. They want to know that you've got that internal motor that I was talking about that's running at all times, that's pushing you forward. Sorry, Harold.
No problem.
You ask the questions, I talk your ear.
No. It also makes me think about, I had a client who were really pushing to see how could he get involved in his community. And the reality is there wasn't much. But then we stumbled upon this notion that he had a brother with allergies, food allergies, and he actually did dinners for his brother and his brother's friends, and he cooked in an allergy-free way. Right. And actually, if we created it in the right way, it was pretty effective.
Right, because it's giving this individual license to make broader friendships, to socialize in a way he couldn't before. Like it's a story about values and contributing to someone else, and that's what the application is about. Like people, I think, assume that the application is about kind of like your greatest hits in the most it is about your greatest hits, but in the most stereotypical, like I led the way from start to finish with a product and we all crossed the goal line and we can say here's a tangible result. Whereas maybe it's intangible. Maybe through your values you helped your brother, I think it was, you helped your brother broaden his social net that he couldn't broaden before, and that made a lifetime of impact on this individual.
Right. No, that makes sense. And I want to pick up the notion again a little later. I think in future podcast, we're going to talk about community, particularly for those folks who it comes May 1st and they truly have nothing.
Right.
So, but rather than that, so by the time May 1st hits, you should have your test behind you. You certainly should have some experience with community service. You certainly should have gone out and gotten to know the schools, maybe visited. Certainly webinars are easy. Talking to other students are easy. Okay, so May 1st hits. I've done all of those things. And Jeremy, questions are slowly coming out. What do I do now?
Okay, I think, again, great question. I think that even one more step, I would say, before that is you should have been anticipating they're going to come out, and you should have been working on some brainstorming and idea generation. If you're a very, very prepared applicant, right? Yeah. You should be thinking to yourself, well, what are my key stories here? And not just thinking about them, from a from a single angle. Right. So we look at that individual who has the allergy, helped his brother with his allergies. Yeah. Maybe that's part of a theme of him going out there and helping make individual impacts on people's lives. Or maybe that's a story of dedication because he himself had to learn to cook and he went through and took lessons and whatever it might be. I don't know this individual story, but I think we have a tendency to think about stories in one way. I led this project. It's like that project had obstacles. Maybe you have to persuade other people. Maybe so. I think really, really digging deep into your own story and thinking about your story from different angles, professionally, personally, academically, in your community. I think that's the first step you take.
Okay. And how do we do this in a formal way? Because obviously everything you just said makes perfect sense. That noted, none of us think about our lives that way.
Right.
How does one actually do that? I don't know what the story of Harold Simansky is. I simply don't. My children know better than I do.
Right.
But how would you approach that?
Okay, so I think I would approach like you tell a client. So in our case, we do have a brainstorming questionnaire, and it's online now through On Track by MBA Admission, and so applicants can go through that process with us. But I think it's a process of kind of what I would say is, it's almost like if you're not using our paid services, that's okay. The free advice I'd give is I would say, think about your identities. Yeah. So I'll use myself because that's easiest. We're live. Yeah. I am, I'm an entrepreneur. Yeah. I'm a father of three. Yeah. I am on the board of my children's school.
Yes.
I am somewhat of I don't know if I call myself an athlete at this point. I'm a hobbled athlete at this point with a bad hip. But there have been periods of time where I've gone through intense periods of competition. Yes. So then I'm going to say, okay, these are my identities. I'm going to break them down. I'm going to say, okay, on the school board, what is on the board of the school? Right. What have my key accomplishments been? So, I'm not going to go into it in detail, but let's say I can find 3 accomplishments. Then I'm going to try and break them down and do exactly what I said I did. So theoretically, let's say I was on the board and I was helping to revise our budget. I would say, did I have to persuade other people to revise our budget? Okay. Did I have to, did I have to learn to exercise different skills? I'm used to being a bull in a china shop, and now I have to be a diplomat. Yes. And I'm just going to keep. And so I think if you can start with those identities and kind of break it down into individual projects, and then look at those projects from different angles, you're going to make a lot of progress. Then I think what you have to do is you have to look at all those outputs, and this is where it gets hard. Right. But you have to look at all those outputs and say, okay, I've got 4 good board stories and 9 great stories from my job and 3 great stories from my from my personal life. Yeah. And you'd say, okay, these are the questions they're asking. Right. And where do these stories fit in? I can't force them in here. I've got to say to myself, like, what are the themes running through my life? Right. So if someone asks me a big, broad, thematic question like, what matters to you most and why, I can draw from a couple different areas and support that theme. Yeah. And then if it's like something discrete, like, tell me about a time when you were proud of a specific event.
Right, you can just grab it.
I can grab my best one. And then you still, even after you do that, you have to kind of take a step back and say, okay, I've thought about these ideas independently, but how do they work as a group? Right. Because I don't want to tell them 3, even if they're spot on stories for 3 different essays about my board activity. Yes. It's too much more. Right. I got to give them different windows of myself. So I have to keep kind of critically assessing as we go through that process.
I'm going to put in a slight commercial. I'm going to say slight because you'll understand. Because we do a lot of brainstorming. As consultants, we do a lot of brainstorming. And I have to say our probably biggest value add, and we're not the only ones who do it. You can certainly have a friend do it, but it's very hard for you to do it, which is find those overarching themes. This notion here of if you do this process right, you will have very disparate pieces. You just do. None of us live particularly linear lives.
Yeah, no one lives a theme. Like, it might be a theme in there, but you're not living a theme each day.
I think one of the hardest things for anyone to do is take all of these different pieces and then figure out a theme. And the reality is I could be somebody who loves skydiving. I could be somebody who actually tutors kids, and I could be somebody who also has climbed mountains, had a terrible first semester at school, but then started doing great. And again, most people are sort of these disparate pieces.
Right.
Yeah. How do you think about a single theme? Because I feel frequently like people try to create a theme that may or may not
force this theme.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so you're not, you're not a theme. They're a complex human being. And so you might have a couple of different themes running through your life that you can accentuate, but you're not inherently a theme. It should be hard for you. You should be thinking about this stuff, and you can say like, hey, I'm an entrepreneur. Like independence is a theme throughout my life. The struggle to really, really define my future is something that is really a theme in my life. But I can also talk about like, change and in my life, and the ability to incorporate different ideas and to be flexible and adjust course. Like that's part of that is entrepreneurial, part of that might be personality. So it's like you have to be willing to be thoughtful and creative. And then that's a lot of what we do with our clients, right? We help to hold that mirror up, and I would say you could work with someone like Harold to hold that mirror up, and he can help you see that. But if it's not in your if not within your plan for applications to work with a consultant, that's fine. I still think it's valuable to find someone who knows you well, whether it's a parent or a cousin or something, who's going to say, these are the things I admire about you. When I think about you, I think about someone who is extremely thoughtful about others. And maybe you don't think about that yourself, right?
So Jeremy, we're just talking about brainstorming. And obviously it can be hard to do, though I have to say I've had clients after the fact who say to me the most valuable piece of our process was brainstorming.
Yeah, clients say things like, I really get to know myself in a way that I didn't anticipate.
And how many of us actually pause, do some introspection about our lives, really think about what our goals are, and it's a very rare thing that we do, and we certainly don't do it with somebody else helping us when all said and done. So
yeah, I think it's a really valuable part of what we offer. Sure.
I think so. And again, not to dwell on this too much, but the reality is this is hard to do. At mbaMission, we do it very well. We now have On Track, if you want to really start our process virtually. Again, has some great advantages to it, particularly when we're talking about brainstorming.
Yeah, you go through a guided process. And I think it's wonderful because I take people through myself. If you're enjoying hearing me talk now, that's great. If you're not, then On Track's not for you because I'm guiding you through the whole thing.
Of course.
But there's a guided questionnaire and videos that help video lessons to help you think about it and help walk you through that process of developing those key stories. But so let me throw this back to you. So we talked about you're moving back, you're moving ahead after May 1st, some brainstorming, and then, you kind of settle on those ideas and then it's just mostly the hard work of putting together your pieces. Like, where do you tell applicants to start? A resume, their essays, all at once?
Well, the way I like to look at it is after we're done with the brainstorming, really towards the end of the process, we have to start thinking about, okay, what is your story? And I'm not saying about writing essays. It's more a question about, okay, what is your story? What is going to be the main point? What's going to be the value add that you add to each school? So once we have that, once in many ways we have our North Star, then everything starts supporting that.
Right.
And what I mean by that, the essays are certainly hitting a specific theme, but also your resume is another piece of the puzzle that also has to reinforce that. Your recommenders, and one thing we really didn't talk about is your recommenders, which by May 1st, you should at least know who they're going to be.
Right.
Yeah. When all said and done.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah. Indeed. But I think your resume, a lot of people just have been cobbling together their resume from the time they were 16 or something like that. You need to really think about, about the weight of your resume. Like, does that, if you're 6 years into your career, do you need that internship?
Right.
If you are applying to business school, do you need a whole bunch of lines of computer languages that you speak, that the admissions officer probably can't even relate to? So you have to think really critically about what you're submitting. And resumes take time. They just take getting an action results oriented resume takes time.
We're going to do a whole podcast on resumes, though I will say one thing, and that is most people's work resume is, I like to say, it's very top focused. Mm-hmm. What have I done in my job? And the reality is business schools are looking to build a community. And I say focus on the bottom half. How have you been as a citizen when you were a student? How are you as a citizen now? Are you going to be supporting other people? Because, again, they don't want people going to the library on Saturday night. They want people who are going to be engaged in their community. Show it using your resume.
Can I offer a peeve of mine on the resume, even though we're doing a specific?
Yeah, sure, of course. Of course.
The last line of your resume, personal, for a lot of people, personal interests, cooking, travel, sports, or like hockey, whatever it might be.
Right.
It's like it doesn't say anything about you at all. Like you can say, travel, 35 countries, favorites include Iceland, Bhutan, and Namibia. That says at least I'm an adventurer.
Right.
But running, how often you say, run each day, thrice weekly runner, and thrice, but
it's training for a marathon. One thing, as long as we're talking pet peeves here, people always say I've traveled to 30 countries. I've traveled to 40 countries. I once had a client who traveled to 108 countries.
Wow.
I didn't even know there were 108 countries in the world. So at this point, if anyone comes to me with less than 108 countries on that travel line, I'm like, hang on here.
Yeah, you got to do something other than list the number of countries. I agree. There's got to be naming as an exotic favorite or something like that.
Exactly.
So I think resumes. You got to. It depends how many schools you're applying to. You might have to, if you're trying to get 7 applications in and get for the first round, and it's May 1st, which some people do. I wouldn't say it's a must, but I would say some people do that. You have to start probably parallel processing, working your resume while you're working on your essays. And there are all these short answers that people don't realize pop up. That you got to get to. You should at least be, as applications themselves open, so the schools release essays before they release their applications.
Yes.
As applications start to open up, usually in late June, early July, start looking towards the short answers and seeing all the specific tiny questions that pop up that just take so much time.
That's actually a really good point in terms of what do you do starting May 1st? As soon as the application opens, I tell people start filling it out because the reality is, first of all, it's incredibly tedious. And second of all, usually those questions are answered 36 hours before the deadline, and some of the answers can be
it's a mess. And they can be really
25, 50 words long.
Yeah.
And now is really the time. Get those out of the way.
Or they can be questions that maybe if you're 6 years into your career and they're asking you just simple questions to get data from you.
Yeah.
What was your salary and bonus in your first job? And maybe you don't even remember anymore. Right. It's it's tough to track that down on deadline day.
Of course.
They're not looking for you to pull your W-2 and say I made $79,231. Yeah. But you can say if you made $79,231, you can say I made $80,000, and you can be if you're wrong and you said 85, no one's gonna pull your acceptance because they do background checks. But you can't be I don't know. I think I made $160,000. You've got to be pretty close.
Yeah, agree. And listen, we can go down the rabbit hole in practically every piece of the application.
And maybe we will.
We'll have a whole podcast in short answers, which is in the works. But Jeremy, I think you come to an important point here, which is, okay, we have brainstorming. We have essays coming. We obviously essays overlap from each school. So at this point, how does one even think about going from brainstorming to essay writing? Are you a guy who does outlines? Are you a guy who really just jumps in there? Is it very much personal choice?
I mean, I would love it if all my applicants did some outlining.
Yeah.
I think the truth is that a lot of them don't. I think to me, it definitely while we're brainstorming, we definitely sketch out a verbal outline.
Yeah.
And then here are your key points. I think we try to talk about interesting openers. Yes. I think our brainstorming session becomes something where you're almost organically seeing an essay take shape before your eyes.
Okay.
We're not just saying hey, let's talk about your involvement in the no-kill shelter. Okay, you launched a new program to recruit 5 more volunteers. That's your story.
Okay.
It's you've got to get to the moment. It's living where it's we really understand okay, what was hard about this experience? Yes. Why weren't people volunteering? What was the impact of those volunteers?
Yeah. Tell us about that aha moment. Tell us about something that was really, really impactful for you.
Exactly. And so we want, and then it's okay, so we've talked about probability with space. Yeah. This is 500 words. This is this one's. This could work for another school, but it's going to be 250 words. This is what we'd probably take out.
Yes.
This isn't going to work for this other school.
Right.
Generally speaking, I'd brainstorm one school at a time and try and focus on them, get people ahead. But still, you might be aware that there's the applicability of schools. And then it's like, I want the applicant to go and create a draft that's to the extent they can. A lot of people struggle with writing, and that's a large portion of why people will hire us. I want them to get that sort of an advanced first draft as they can.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the reality is, what are we looking for here? What is any admissions committee looking for? It is for something that's authentic, something that's genuine, and candidly, something that's not boring.
Right.
I think you and I both do a huge amount of ding reviews. Why do people don't get in? And the reality is because I look at essays frequently and I'm like, oh my God, I can't make it through the second sentence.
You have to think like the admissions officer. You have to think to yourself, like, what if I'm reading 400 files this year, something like that. Yeah. And I'm, what if I'm reading a lot of files this year? I don't know, 250, whatever it might be. And I've read, like, it doesn't mean it has to be totally out of the box and something they've never read before, but like, just put them in and you put yourself in their shoes and say, if I'm reading this and it's like, there's nothing wrong with simple language.
Yes.
Nothing wrong with a straightforward way of leading someone through a story. But like, if you're introducing them to something they've heard a million times over in a very straightforward way, that is it's a problem. Yeah, you've got to think creatively.
Yeah, it's absolutely a problem, particularly for many of you, whether you're a McKinsey Bain BCG consultant or investment banking analyst. You have to remember that there's going to be potentially hundreds of people who are 3 cubicles over, two blocks over.
Yeah, you can't start with like it's even hard for me not to think in a narrative form, but like you can't start with I had many late nights as an investment banker. Yes. Like, so what? So does everybody else. It's like, you've got to, it depends. I can't imagine, the entire narrative, but it depends on your experience. You've got to find something that sort of anchors yourself.
And absolutely. As well as I believe, and I know you believe it as well, is people are interesting. You are interesting. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, you have to find those interesting pieces that only you can see.
100%. Maybe that's I don't know how we're doing in time here, but maybe that's a good place to start thinking about wrapping with this. Yes. But this isn't like Sesame Street with like everyone is interesting. Like it's kind of the truth though. If you do enough digging, I've been working at this for 20 years. Yes. I've worked with thousands and thousands of individuals, both on a pro bono and paid basis, and just through doing free consultations and events. And, I've interacted with a lot of people. And when people come to me and they say, oh, but there's nothing interesting about me, there's always something interesting about them. It's just that they might not understand that it doesn't come through spectacular differentiation, that it can come through teaching through your allergy example, right?
Exactly. Cooking a good meal for somebody else.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a huge differentiation. I've never heard that story before. I've been in this business for 20 years. I've never heard the story of someone helping their sibling reestablish their friend groups by cooking for them. That's amazing.
And also in some ways it's very, very small, but it's also very telling. It's very telling about who that person is, what he does, the important pieces of his life. And I think that's what makes it interesting.
Yeah.
And what I also tell my clients frequently is if you do your brainstorming right, if you do your introspection right, you will find those interesting pieces.
Yeah.
You really will.
You will. And if you can't, then it probably is very much worth the investments.
Yeah.
In working with a professional to get you there. If you're really uncertain of what you want to say as an applicant, it's probably time.
And again, we'll be wrapping up here in a minute, but you can imagine we work with a lot of people. And the reality is when they come to us, 80% thinks that they're boring, that they have nothing to say. And I guarantee you, if we do our job right, and we do almost all the time, we will find your interesting story, and you can find it too.
Yeah.
But Jeremy, last word here. May 1st, I'm panicking a little bit. What should I do?
I think that, in giving me that scenario, immediately I think to myself, you're a lot like a lot of other applicants. You're a lot of applicants are nervous to take those first steps because it's committing to a process. It's accepting that there potentially could be some disappointment at certain schools, although most people who are realistic with their chances do find their way into business school. So, and it's also just kind of like, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first few steps, right? Absolutely. You've just got to engage, like I think there's some applicants out there who it's May 1st and they're just like, oh, this is a bear.
Right. What do I do?
And then that leads to panic later on, because those applicants, it's very rare someone says, this is a bear, I'm not going to do it all together. This is a bear, I don't want to think about it, I'm afraid of it. And then it's like, okay, I've waited until some panic sets in. So and just start taking those steps and work methodically, and you'll be engaged in it. It's like a tractor beam.
Yeah.
It'll pull you towards the deadline.
Absolutely. And what I'm going to say, a little bit of commercial here, maybe a great place to get started is with a free 30-minute consult here with MBA Mission.
Yeah, it's free. And it's not to sell you anything. It's there to give you free advice, right?
We look at your resume, we start talking to you, we answer your questions, and we really feel like we can get you started. Frequently, that means working with us, whether directly with one of the consultants who are like me or like Jeremy, or maybe through the new OnTrack, or certainly start off looking at some of our free resources at mbaMission.com.
Yeah, I would say, if you've enjoyed this podcast, Harold is, he does free consultations. I do free consultations. Just you can go online, you can go and sign up for a free consultation with us, and we have it set up so you can pick the individual you want to chat with on our team.
Absolutely. We have 25 of us. All of us have our expertise. All of us have worked with hundreds of clients. So the reality is, give us a call. Let's start chatting. And I think it's going to be really beneficial.
Yeah. No, it's riskless.
Yeah. With that in mind, thank you all today for listening to the MBA Mission podcast.
Thanks for doing this, Harold. I really appreciate that you're committed to educating the public at this level. And I hope to come back. I know I'm coming back. I know I'm looking for more. And I'll be a mainstay.
Absolutely. And 20 of my colleagues will be joining me soon to talk about all sorts of things: recommendations, resumes, community service, school selection. Hey, even how about getting a scholarship? We have a lot of things to cover. Everyone, have a great day. And by all means, check us out at mbaMission.com.
Thanks so much for doing this. Good luck, guys.
Thanks for listening to the MBA Mission podcast. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe wherever you get your favorite podcasts so you don't miss an episode. We wish you the best of luck with your MBA applications and look forward to helping you on your journey to business school.